Let's start from Tainli Chit in this iron, because it's a little bit of a hemshach, okay? About 8 lines from the bottom. Tainli Pikadon Shumas Yad Gezel V'Aveda Sheyesh L'Biyadcha. On Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, 9 lines from the bottom. Tainli Pikadon Shumas Yad Gezel V'Aveda Sheyesh L'Biyadcha. If he gives a list of Ruvain and says, I want all these things you owe me. You owe me a Pikadon and Shumas Yad and Gezel V'Aveda, 4 different things. And Shimon answers back, I don't have them, and he makes a shvuah. So we say, if he answers back, I don't have any of them, then he's only just says one shvuah, then he only has to pay one. But if he denotes each one separately, that's what the Mishnah says, he's chayav on each one. Then the Mishnah continues, this is our Gemara, Tenli chitin usairin, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, pruta mikulam mitzdarefes. Rabbi Yochanan says a pruta from each one of these things is mitzdaref. You have to have, if you have not from each one of these things, if you have a pruta altogether from all these things, it's mitzdaref. Pliga baravacha ravina. But what is that pruta coming from? One says that when we say chitin, nisairin, and kusmin, which is 3 separate things. He says, first he says, Shavuos she'ein li chitin usairin v'kusmin. The Shavuos she'ein li is 1 Shavuos, and then the chitin is a second, sairin is a third, and kusmin is a 4th. So in addition to each individual one, I'm sorry, so he says, prati mechayiv, you're only mechayiv on the chitin, sairin, and kusmin. Aklal mechayiv, for that which he said, ein li Shavuos she'ein li, that's not going to be considered a separate shvuah. So when we're saying he's going to be mechayiv akulan, that's going on the case where he put them all together. If we said chitin usairin, he didn't say on all of them, he answered back that I don't have any of them. On that, if between the 3 of them there's a pruta, then he'll be chayiv. The other mandama says you chayiv one for the klal, for all 3 of them, where he said shvuah she'ein li, so that even though he might not be able to be mechayev for the pratim, he'll still be mechayev for the klal. Rav Chia says there's 15 chatois. If that's talking about in the case where there were 5 people, each one of them saying chitin, sairin, and kusmin. So you do 3 times 5, that comes out to 15. Vim Isa, if you hold that there's a 4th, a klali, there's one. When he says Shavuos she'ein li, that's a klal. Esrim havin, that's 20, because you have the 3 individual plus the 4th klali one. It's like, Haitana de prati kachashav, the klali kachashav. It's like, no. When we said 15, because he's only counting the individual, he's saying how many individuals there are. Even though he's also chayav the klali, he's not counting that. That's not what the Tana is talking about. In fact, Rav Chia says there are 20 chatayis. So how could you say he's not counting the klali? That's not talking about the 3 different types of grains. That's talking about the 4 different types of, where someone made a shvuas hapikadon on the 4 different types of stealing, where one was in a pikadon, one was a shumas yad, which is a loan, one was where he had something in his hand by gezel, and one where he had an aveda. So 4 times 5, where there were 5 individuals that were all asking for 4 things, that's how you get to 20. If there were 5 people coming to him, right? Ruvain is being besieged by 5 people who say he owes them. And each one of those 5 people said, there are 4 things that you owe us. He said to one of them, I don't have any one of the 4 things, and he says each one individually, so each one would be a separate shvuah. And then he says, V'loy l'cha, v'loy l'cha, v'loy l'cha, v'loy l'cha. He says to the other 4 people, and not to you, and not to you, and not to you, mahu. What is he saying? Is he achadim chayiv? Is he going to be chayiv for each one of the last 4 people? Do we say loy l'cha v'loy l'cha? Is that just a single shvuah? He's not replicating the 4 separate shvuos that he had said to the first one. Or do we say he's going to? So according to the first pshat, he would mechayev a total of 8, 4 for the first guy, and then 1 more for each of the next 4 people? Or do you say it's going to be 20? It's going to be 4 separate Shavuos HaPikadon for all 5 of his plaintiffs. Tashma, the Tana Rav Chia, Reikan Esrim Chatois. We said that Rav Chia says there's 20 Chatois. Hey Chidami, what's the case? Either parish, if we're talking about where he said on each one, I don't have for you a Chumas Gezel, Chumas Yad, and all 4 things, and he repeats that by each one. Rabbi Chia Minyana also Ashmin, is he coming to just count out? If he said each one individually, obviously he's going to be chayiv each one. El lav dulei parish. We're talking about he was not parish. Shema mina prati havi. So you see that in this case it would be considered that he was trying to be mefared each one individually, and that's how you got to 20. That's what that even though he said l'cha l'cha, that's considered to be a separate shvua for each one.
So it's gonna be how you get the number of 20 then?
There were 5 people.
And each one has 4.
5 people had
4
4
different
times.
topics. Got it.
Apikadon, Chumas Yod, Gezel, and Aveda. But the problem was in the last 4, he didn't list them. He just said l'cha l'cha l'cha. So he's saying that must have been the case that Rav Chia was talking about, because he must be saying a chiddush, and he's saying even so that it's considered to be a separate shvuah for each one of each person's shvuos. The Mishnah said weiter. Ansu opatisa es biti. We said if someone said Reuven said to Shimon, you will ma'anis or mafata, my daughter. So we had a machlekes in the Mishnah. According to, I think it was the Tanakama, we said he's going to be chayiv. He's going to be chayiv for saying this, because the Mishnah had said that included. We had this in the. I think the Mishnah says it straight out, that included in the shvuah. Well, let's see the lashon of the Mishnah. Anas b'tis biti v'hu I'm eloy anasi loy patisi mashbiach aniva amen chayiv Shimon pater shein v'knas al pi atzme. If Shimon says you're pater because it's a knas, and you're not chayiv a knas if you're moida, so therefore it's not considered a shibud of mammon, because if Reuven is accusing Shimon of being ma'anis his daughter, if Shimon is moida to it, he's not going to have to pay the knas, the 50 shkalim. Amar loy, the Chum said back to Rav Shimon, the Chacham say back to Rav Shimon, but there's still, even though he could pater himself for the einus and the knas, he's still on the hook for the actual damage that he did, the einus boishus upgam, and that's regular mammonus, and that there's no way out of it. Zok the Gemara. Amar Rav Chia bar Abba Amar Rav Yecha. My time with Rav Shimon. What's the reason for Rav Shimon? L'chayra the Chacham have a good taina that in addition to the knas element, there's also a mammonistic element, the boishus upgam, and that should be a chayiv Shavuos HaPikadon. So Rav Shimon must be because hayel v'ikar knas hu teveh, because the ikar that he's being teveh is the knas. The boishus upgam is just a second thing, and that he doesn't really have in mind, and that's not what he has in mind with the shul.
Why does that make a difference? What his das is on? What that? I never. This is a new.
That I guess we're saying the shvuah is. This is not a shvuah that's happening in Bezdin. When you make a shvuah in Bezdin, we said before, he says it's aldas Bezdin and aldas the Rebbeinu Shalom, right? We said that the person can't have his own machshavas when he makes a shvuah. But in this case, it's not in Bezdin. The person made a shvuah, so we're making, I guess, some sort of anansadi that this is. The likelihood is that this is what the focus of what his denial. Listen, maybe I'll pay you the boishus upgam. The main thing is I don't want to pay the big 50 shkalim.
We've seen this before. This concept, the depending what the das of the guy. My sense of nasi p'tisias biti. You know what I'm saying? We
saw back and forth about this. We said that generally the rule is what a person has in mind is not relevant. But we said under certain circumstances, it will come up actually on the next plot. I mean, that's that. I don't know what to tell you. Let's look at the Rashi. Let's see what Rashi says on this. No, there's no Rashi.
No places on the bottom. It's not helpful.
The parish. Knasu teveya zok Rashi. It's a second line on the top. Iket tviyase ala knasi. V'af agav the boishus upgam nami b'chlal kfir nunu. Lo mechayev elayu can mefarish v'yazal.
All right, I guess we'll see
Okay.
later on.
I think the Gemara is going to say a little bit of a svara of why. The Gemara later on is going to say a svara of why it's not what he means, but that's not really your question. Your
No.
question is, why does it make a difference what he means?
Right.
Right. So that when he says Kamfarish Vazal is just what the svara behind of why he would care more about the knas. It also it's a kfiras. I think a shuas hapikadon is only when there was a tviya that he was asked to make a shvur. So maybe maybe the point is that the tviya of the other side doesn't have that in mind. The person who's asking for the money is not thinking about that, and that we're going to say svaras on in a minute. So Zak the Gemara, Amar Rava, Mashal der Shimon, and you're going to get upset about this, but the Gemara is going to be equally upset. Amar Rava, Mashal der Shimon, Lama Davadaim. According to Rav Shimon is saying that he's not going to pay he's not going to chayiv Shavuos bikadon because Shimon's not paying attention because it's knas. To someone who said, "Give me chitin sarim kusman that you owe me," and he said, "I sure that I don't have chitin." And the taka turns out that he doesn't have chitin. He doesn't have the chitin of the other person, but he does have the sarin kusman, the potter. He's going to be potter, right? Because he denied having the chitin. The taka doesn't have the chitin. The chitin when he swore that he doesn't have chitin, he was telling the truth. Abaye said, "Me dummy." Is that what's going on here? We're talking about over here. We're trying to say that when Reuben says to Shimon, "You owe me chitin, sarin, and kusman," and Shimon makes a shvur that he doesn't have chitin, and it turns out Hitaka doesn't have chitin, but he has the sarin and kusman. So clearly, Shimon is not going to chayiv a shvur sepikadam. What he swore was true. We're saying that's similar to the case of Rav Shimon, where he said, Reuben said to Shimon, "You owe me money for being ma'anis my daughter," and Shimon makes a shvur that he wasn't ma'anis his daughter, and we say that over here that he didn't because he had in mind for the knas, and he didn't and the knas is takanat machayev on. Zakdamara, midami, what's the comparison? Over there, when he says I didn't have chitin, that's all he denied. Over here he said I wasn't honest your daughter. So that includes both that I don't owe chitin and I don't own the knas and I don't own the bais to become. Dami, what it's really comparable to, this is what you would have gotten upset about. And he makes a shvur I don't have anything. Is it over here? He still owes the bais subkam, the mechayev. Elaki also Rav and Rav Yechon and Divrei Reb Shimon knasu tevei avaloi bais subkam. Divrei Chom av bais subkam tevei. According to Reb Shimon, when the person comes to say make a shvur, what he's saying is he's only asking for the knas, the person whose child it is. He only wants the knas. He's not thinking about the bais subkam. And according to the Chacham, he's also thinking about the bais subkam. But my kamifli, what's the base of the machlokes? Amar Papa, if Shimon Sava l'shavik inish midi de kayetz v'tava midi de loy kayetz. A person has in mind the knas because that's 50 shkalim, and he knows exactly how much is it. Bais subkam, you're gonna have to get forensic evidence. You're gonna have to go make a umdina. He doesn't have that in mind. He's not focused on that. When he has to make a shvur, all he has in mind, when he asks for the shvur, all he has in mind is the knas. The Ramad say exactly the opposite. The person is more focused on the bais pagam because, as it happens, his shvur is not going to be a shvur sapikon that's mechayev and asham because it's taka knas and he could be made on it. He has an option of avoiding the punishment on the shvur. So the shvur that he wants is the most effective shvur, which is the one the bais pagam. And therefore, when the person denies that he was ma'aneser, he's denying the shvur that was imposed on him for the bais pagam. Now, what bothers me about this is that there has to be a tvia, but it's not like Shavuos ha'edus, where we say that it has to be a tvia from the person who was harmed, and it has. This is all. This is like we don't really see anything saying exactly who has to be teveihim. We don't give as much credence, and now we're saying it's going to all depend on what his thoughts were. Okay, I think I would stop here if that's okay with you. And
yes.
tomorrow we'll go move on to Shavuos Hadayanim.
Okay, thank you.